Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my good friend, my brother from another mother. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, the marvelous Mr. Wes Brown.
The marvelous Mr. Wes. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to put that as a moniker underneath my business card. The marvelous Mr. Wes. How you doing, Todd? Oh my God, it's another week.
I'm good. I had an interesting 24 hours. I went and saw Iron Maiden last night.
Oh, you're kidding me. Are they still live?
Yeah. And they sound good. And I've never seen Maiden before. It's one of those bands where I always thought, oh, that'd be kind of cool to go check out. And, but never would because, I didn't know anybody else that was really a Maiden fan. And I'm not a huge Maiden fan, but, I grew up with that music. And it was definitely one of the best concerts I've ever seen. Very theatrical.
Wow.
If you've never seen Iron Maiden, the stage presence was phenomenal and the musicianship was fantastic. So yeah, great show. And then today I went to my nephew's birthday party and got bum rushed by a 10-year-old with Silly String. So
from Iron Maiden to Silly String.
So,
oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. Took a shot to the butt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I actually took my motorcycle out this weekend, really one of the few times I've taken it out this year, and did my traditional Mount Rushmore pass, which was beautiful. And the weather was absolutely wonderful. So that felt good. Listened to a little music and hit the open road. And that was nice.
Are you seeing any changes in the leaves up there yet?
Actually I am. I started to see a little bit of yellow coming through some of those aspens. So
it's coming,
I would
man.
imagine Telluride is getting ready to kick it off.
Yeah, I know in the high country, they're starting to see some changes. So I'm looking forward to it too. I love fall.
Yeah.
We want to take a moment and thank everyone that came out to Art and Ag. We had a fantastic time despite the chilly weather and a little bit of misty rain. Thank you to all the artists that participated and our host, Paul Fleischer, and crew from the Fleischer Family Farm. A lot of great folks came out from the community and supported this wonderful group of artists that we put together, and they walked away with some phenomenal art. If you're looking for farm fresh produce, you have just a few more weeks before the season is done, and he closes the farm stand for the year. So follow the Fleischer Family Farm on their Facebook page to see what they have to offer for their next three Saturday markets. Did you have a good time at Art and Ag?
I had a great time. A little soggy at first, but yeah. It was a wonderful time. The weather wasn't too bad, even though it was an overcast. And it was just wonderful seeing all the artists out there and seeing the community support that came out. So, yeah, it was a great time.
And we're going to have one more Tenet event before the end of the year. That'll be happening in December. And we'll relate more of the details for that. But look forward to some kind of show towards the end of the year. And we'll get more details out on our social media, and we'll tell you about it here, hopefully in our next episode. All right. You ready to talk some art?
Let's do it.
Our guest this week is a member of Next Gallery, a fantastic artist that has been on our radar for a while. You can check out his work at kremske.com and on Instagram at In the Wood Studio. And it's in_the_wood_ studio. Welcome to the program, Nicholas Kremske.
Thanks, guys.
How you doing, Nick?
I'm good. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you tonight. I've been looking at your website and your Instagram, and I love your stuff. So are you in Conifer?
Yeah, we're in that weird, how Littleton has swallowed up every world around. So we call ourselves Littleton Conifer because we're technically in Littleton and 50 feet outside of Conifer. So yeah, we're up in the foothills. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. I just say, hey, we're at 8,000 feet, and that's good enough for most people.
There you go. That's a beautiful area, that drive going up that way. I love that area.
Yeah, it's we've been up here 3 years now, and it's quite the change because we have been urbanites for a very long time. I'd say over 30, 40 years. So we're adapting, but it's great. We love it up here. Winter comes early, but it just never gets tiring. Just for the first time in my life, it's like, oh, I can go out in the yard and just like, walk around naked, but I don't, just because I'm afraid of wild animals. But me a lot of privacy, and it's been really good for me personally to come into this quiet space. So, I can turn down some of the noise of what's going on in the world. It's like our own little retreat.
Nice. I love that. Have the trees started changing there yet?
Barely.
Barely.
It's almost imperceptible. Yeah. It's been a wet year up here. So I don't know if it's going to kick it off like it normally would.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know there's a secret sauce to get the really bright leaf colors. And I don't know if it's like early wet and then dry, or, I know there's a secret sauce to the whole deal though.
Yeah. It's got me, to be honest with you, I lived in Minneapolis for 20 years. So chartreuse is not terribly impressive. It's just like, because like, oh, everyone's coming up to see yellow leaves. Cool. But it is a nice, it's the kickoff to like, I better get firewood.
Oh, speaking of that, I seen your firewood stacks. My God, it's beautiful. If you haven't seen anybody stack wood, go to his Instagram page and check out his wood stacks, because they're a piece of work themselves. Beautiful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I didn't invent it. It's actually called the Norwegian wood round, and the beauty of that methodology is I don't need to brace it, and it holds twice as much. And I found, honestly, it's kind of almost meditational in doing that process. So it's fun, I get a kick out of it, because having been in urbanite so long, I'm going to do my goofy mountain things until like the old guys come up and they just all laugh at it. And it's like, well, yeah, I don't have rebar and lumber hanging around everywhere like you guys in the wall of wood. So my wife likes it, so got to make her something every so often.
There you go.
Yeah, those are cool. I'm glad you mentioned that, Wes, because I was admiring those as well. And what do they call them again? Norwegian
wood round. Yeah,
wood round. Okay.
Yeah, and the Germans do something too. It's really crazy. There's a whole art form around wood stacking. If you want to wood nerd out that hard like I have, you can. But it's an art form of its own, and it's like they've got websites on it, and there's guys in Norway doing some crazy stuff where they're making troll wood stacks. So yeah, it's fun. It's a different way of doing things. It's kind of what arts people do.
Do you have the Got Wood t-shirt?
Not yet. That's me. I'll have to put that on my Amazon shopping list.
I think you should have that, man.
Yeah, maybe Get Wood too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I can appreciate that whole process, and people that use wood as a main form to heat their houses or what have you. Spending a lot of time in Southern Colorado and San Luis Valley, I mean, that's what a lot of people do, and it's a lot of work, man. So good for you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been different. Just you get a different connection to things when your life is, sure, we got propane and electric up here, but there's something special about going out and harvesting more or less and taking care of the land and using its resources, to fuel your life. And it pushes me to a different level living in nature up here. And it gives me the contemplation, because you're out there a lot doing these things and you're just invested in the environment and yourself, because you have to do this. There's no one else who's going to come up and do it for you. It's very fulfilling, and I have lots of people come up, I teach them how to run the chainsaws and split wood and show them how to stack it, and they get a kick out of it. They don't realize how much work it really is. And then I usually only see them once or twice.
Oh, hey man, however you have to do it. If you can pull off the whole Tom Sawyer thing, right? Like, hey, let me show you how it's done. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly.
The only problem is, like you said, you got to constantly meet people. So you have more, you can generate constant flow of people coming up, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I've met some people who are like, "Oh, this is great," and then they get into it. And I shouldn't say people plural. I met a person that was really into it. Most people are like, "Oh, how much does it cost?" "Oh, okay, I'm just going to have it delivered."
Oh, man.
It's a bonding thing, manual labor. That's the gist of it.
Totally. I do believe in that. So how long have you lived in Colorado? You said you lived in Minneapolis previous for 20 years.
Yeah, we've been in Colorado for 6 years now. My wife, it was around that deep freeze in the north. My wife looked at me and she said, "I can't do it anymore." And she had grown up in Minnesota, and she's like, "I can't do it anymore." So we were looking to relocate actually to Seattle, to a more mild climate. And then she just got a great job offer here. And since I was just kind of on my emerging artist path at that time, the world was pretty fluid for me. So we went for it, and we've been here for 6 years, and just we're done moving. Colorado's our home now, and we like it here, and we're not from California, so it works out.
Yeah, we'll take you if you're from Minnesota or from somewhere else in the Midwest. That's fine. There's other states that are, kind of blacklisted for Colorado.
Yeah,
and
I've seen the hit list.
Yeah, I see them driving all the time. So 6 years here in Colorado. How do you feel compared to like the Minnesota art community? Has it been easy to integrate yourself into the whole art community here in Colorado? Has it been difficult?
Honestly, so when we first moved here, I joined up. I rented a space down at Boxcar on Santa Fe when it was still around. I think it was the Quinlans who ran it. And I tried to, let me back up. So I had a studio space in St. Paul that was about like 1,400 square feet with a river view and a warehouse loft. And that was working for me. I tried to replicate that here at Boxcar, and it downsized to 400 square feet, and just sitting in a little hot box, and it was tough. I had probably, I would talk to tons of people, but my sales are pretty bad. Not going to lie, and I didn't realize at that time that Denver has so many different art areas. And I just had plugged into the one, tried a model that just wasn't successful for me. So, I took some time off. I actually became a fishing guide for a couple of years, and then decided it's time to try again. So I joined Next. And once I joined Next and actually committed in that smaller co-op dynamic versus trying to do this, the lone wolf thing out of a space and pushing your own work, it started moving a lot better. And the art market here is a lot more dynamic than it was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, because up there's some great art being made, but it's a craft orientated culture, meaning there's more. If it's not craft, it doesn't get the same measure as fine arts. So moving to an area like, like Denver, and then like plugging in, trying, working at it, and exposing myself to it, it's really impressive how much art is going on here and how many artists are here. So it's been a great move for us. I wish I would have tried the route I did eventually. I wish I would have tried that out of the gate, but live and learn. And people have received what I'm doing here pretty, with open arms, and they're intrigued. And it's like before, in the Minneapolis market, just because it wasn't very fine art tuned, I got a lot of, "What's this?" What am I looking at? And here, I think viewers and appreciators of art, they have a more, what I'm trying to say here, they have a higher degree of sensitivity to the arts. So they're able to actually like, a lot of people don't want to know how it's made. A lot of people don't want to know what a story is because they're just art appreciative. They're appreciative of the art. And then they want to go into those deeper level questions, which are fun to talk about. But it's a different market here. And, I really found that there's so much support in Denver for an artist. And that's amazing. I mean, like what you guys are throwing out with Tenet, I've met, there's an art fair. It seems like every weekend during the summer to the point, like I can't keep up with it. And there's an opening every Friday of somewhere in town. It's like, man, you almost need to spend a day to plan your weekend and then try and get like half of it done. I mean, it's great. And I love it because it's intriguing. There's lots of great art being made here. Every time I go out, I'm seeing somebody new. I'm seeing something intriguing. It doesn't matter if I'm like in the Triangle or if I go down, to 40 West or to Rhino. There's always something happening somewhere, and it's so much and so varied and so wonderful. It's overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, literally, you could be out, 3-4 times a week looking at art, like you said, a festival, a gallery opening, what have you. And it literally can be overwhelming at times. And I will tell you this, I feel guilty at times because there's so much to see. And, we know so many artists that, you just can't get to everything.
It's a great problem though.
It is a great problem
because you don't have to wait for that one big show a year. Like a lot of, mid-sized cities. It's like, oh, the big shows here. There's like 20 of them, in Denver. So if you missed one, oh, you got a chance, So yeah, it's an amazing arts community here, and it's been good to me. It's really pushed me further personally and artistically.
You mentioned that back in Minneapolis, St. Paul, it's more craft oriented. Is there a very prevalent like gallery scene there like there is here?
Let's see. And when I left 6 years ago, I think there was 6 commercial galleries between the two cities. So 6 commercial galleries in a population of about 600K. However, there was a lot of arts buildings. There's about 10 art hubs for independents to work out of. We had 2 art museums, and a third burgeoning one, like nationally recognized. So there's a lot of appreciation of the arts there, but the commercial model is not very prevalent. So you could do a lot of public things there. You could do a lot of this, but sustaining an arts career just based on your arts is pretty difficult in the region. I'm not trying to poo-poo the area. I loved Minneapolis when I was there as my second home, but it's a different culture, and that's what's wild is like you move through the country and it's like, oh, this place is great, this is happening, and then you kind of navigate a little deeper and you can see what's really going on. And it's if you're a public arts person or you're looking for an inexpensive workspace, it's a great place. If you're trying to make it at a commercial level, it could be a little more difficult.
Well, it's interesting to hear that because we haven't really talked to anybody from that area. And we're always curious, like, what's the art scene like there? And so I'm a little surprised actually that there isn't a larger like gallery scene. But like you said, if you're an independent artist and you need space, it sounds like there's a plethora of it, and it's pretty reasonable compared to Denver.
Oh yeah. That's an understatement. So yeah, my 1,200 square foot studio with a river view and like in a warehouse space, it was about $500 a month.
Wow.
Damn.
Wow.
How's that for some math on you?
Holy cow.
And I was paying that at Boxcar for like 400 square feet.
Yeah.
And I shared the room with a propane heater. Yes. So yeah, but it's a different economy, you know. It's and who's to say things haven't changed? It's like they've been going through some tumultuous times there as of late, you know, with the riots and things of that nature. So I don't know. Phoenix from the ashes, maybe, you know, it's that's what I'm hoping for. But you know, I'm going to throw this out there. If you are a potter or a ceramicist, that is the place to be, because that's almost like a mecca that for ceramicists and potters, because that's what they're attuned to, is that kind of physicality and that kind of object orientated, but it has to have purpose. It's a cool place, but yeah, I mean, I wish there were more commercial galleries there. You know, there's only, I can't even remember the names of the handful that I went to, because there was no like blue chip galleries there. There's a couple that maybe were on par with the Golden Triangle galleries here, but a lot of it was like people trying to do it themselves, and it's difficult, you know, just because what happens there is in the winter there's no foot traffic, you know, and it's kind of shuts down the world, and people, I call it it's like the hamsters. You're in hamster land, because you're going through tunnels and bridges and your little routes just to get from here and there. And you got your little blinders on because it's just so cold. You've got to get there. There's not a lot of, like here, I went ice fishing last winter in a t-shirt, you know, like what's up with that? So the pace of life there doesn't let someone, there's an urgency to get like warm, and you know, a lot of these arts facilities, you know, there's no there's like minimal heat. It's uncomfortable, and they'd rather be home in the winter. So, but like I said, if you're working and you want to work, that's solace. And that winter, I swear, it was like, I don't think I can match the pace here that I was putting out work up there, because that's all I had to do for 6 months out of the year. Whereas here, it's like, oh, you know, there's so much going on all the time. I actually have to carve out time here. So it's been good though. I mean, I don't like talking down about any arts market. It's a little difficult and a little different for a fine artist up there, especially if you're doing something a little avant-garde or contemporary that people haven't attuned their sensibilities to and have a different access point with.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just good to hear what it's like from a different art market. And I don't think you're talking down. You're just being real about it. Yeah. And you know what? Like you said, it's been a little while since you lived there, so maybe some things have started to change a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you got the Walker Fine Arts Center there, you know, the iconic cherry on the spoon place, you know, they do so much and they bring in so much international talent. It's amazing, you know. And then we have the Art Institute, or the Minneapolis Institute of the Arts. There we go, MIA. They had the largest Asian art collection, you know, from ancient to about mid-century around. And they've got great facilities, cool places like that. So they do attract the attention. You know, I think there's only one art school left, and that's the Minneapolis Institute of the Arts. There used to be 3 there at one time. So it's one of those, it's the Midwest, you know, it's kind of like where, you know, I grew up in Cicero, Illinois. So it was one of those, you grow up in this, if it doesn't have purpose mentality, it's really hard to sink your teeth into it. Yeah, it's that blue collar farm life. It's got to have a value beyond just looking good, you know? So
right.
Very utilitarian.
Yeah, perfect word. Thank you.
So I want you to start by, as we get into your work and your process, I want you to take a moment and tell our listeners what you do, what mediums you work in, and kind of your process and the work that you do.
Sure. Well, pretty much right now, I consider myself a mixed media artist. However, I started in photography, practiced photography for about over 30 years, still do. And I came into this current model of how I'm working with digital and analog printing and processes to create these large scale, I'm going to call it collage type work as more of a financial thing. And then it just became my medium of choice. So I started out basically traditional photography, silver, black and white dark rooms, followed that through. And what happened to me is I had a shift in concept where it's like, hey, I can't afford to print photographs to the scale I want to see them. So I came up with this process where I started overlaying images onto hardboard and then piecemealing them together. It was in response to a neighbor hired me to do a commission and it needed to be X size. And if I got it printed, I'd come out with no money, because the cost of material. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to build an image. So I had played with some of these concepts before, but I started working where I took the photograph, deconstructed it down to a workable image where I can tile it together and then rebuild it on a hardboard. And in doing so, it created a new textural quality. It gave it more space. It gave it a dreamy like atmosphere. And it was like, okay, I've never done anything like this before because, I'm from the school, like everybody who's been brought up in photography, I say comes from the school of perfectionism, where it's like, oh, smooth surface, blah, blah, blah. And this thing was, at that time, it was one of my first big pieces, but this thing was ugly, but there was something there. I mean, it was ugly in the photographic concept of that pure photography, but it had just shifted me into that world of this is not photography so much anymore as it's based within the realm of photography. And I just started working on perfecting this technique so it was predictable and my results were predictable and I could do it over and over again. And that's pretty much like what I've been doing the last 4 years is perfecting this technique. And it's great because like with the photograph, you take the shot, digital, what you got. Back with film, you knew you had something good. Now I'm also photographing I have to start with a great image or a solid photographic image. And by doing so, I set myself up for success where when I start deconstructing it, it doesn't just die. It's like, so if we're making a cake, good ingredients, right? So in this deconstruction part, I start thinking of things because I always take my photographic image about 90% of the time, I turn it into straight monochrome, black and white, because I'm really intrigued by the line quality at this point, more so than the content of subject. I want to see the line quality. And then I output these lines more or less, and I lay them out to the scale I'm going to be working. And then I just sit with it, and it kind of like, all right, this sounds really goofy, but it tells me what it wants to look like. You sit in a room with it, and you just give it the time, and then I'll do a color study on it if it needs to be color, or and things of that nature. And as I build it, it changes again because I'm dealing with things of paper, the properties of paper. Paper shrinks and expands when it gets certain chemicals in it, and I'm using adhesives to create this. So it takes up the paper grain reacts a certain way to these adhesives, and these images, like these panels I'm working with, expand and contract. And now it's kind of like, all right, now I'm in my own personal chaos and hell. So it's like doing a jigsaw where the pieces look like they match, but they don't really match. And I'm forcing my will. And then and I found like a real solace in this. Like, it's like a personal acceptance of, hey, this is the flaw is what makes it beautiful. It's kind of this wabi sabi concept of, the imperfect can be beautiful, the broken that's been fixed takes on a new life. And it's and that's where I've kind of been progressing with this idea for the last 4 years. But yeah, it's like I wish I could talk a little more intelligently to it's like the mixed media photographic based collages that I'm doing. I mean, that's the nutshell of it. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things I haven't seen anyone else do. So it's hard for me to, get a lot of the words for it. It's not for like, I think I've rewritten my artist statement like 30 times in the last 4 years, trying to nail this.
Trying to distill it down to what it is.
Right. Yeah. Because it's different. I mean, you've guys seen my work. It's different. It's got a different dynamic to it. Because you can see the analog, you can feel the digital, and it's like, and that's why I love this overlay technique, because it's just the layers build up. And that's it creates an image that I'm excited to make.
I think it's an exciting experience from the viewpoint of the person that's viewing it, the viewer, because it is so different. And I love that the foundation of what you're doing is still like from your roots, it's still photography, but then, you figured out your own process to dissect it and then put it back together into this whole other thing, based on vision and intuition, essentially.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've been influenced by a lot of artists over the years, and then photographers as well. But the most impactful influence is the Starn brothers for me out of New York. And what they did is they took photographs and treated them as objects of art, meaning they would scratch them up, use 3N tape to glue them together, mount them like hides on a wall. And this is photography, So those, once I got turned on to those guys, it's like, wait a minute, there's more to photography than that perfect image all the time. It's got some deviations, and so they kind of like, then there's this Joel Peter Wicken.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he does some great macabre, I call it's just beautifully grotesque work. But his process was like, it was all about defacing his negative. Those are things that, like, as we're brought up into photography, we're protected with your life, man.
Yeah, that thing's sacred, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was sacred. And here's this guy, man, he's gouging this thing, dropping acid on it. Then he goes to print it, and he's getting this great, emotionally impactful image out of it. And those were like, some of my inspirations to like, okay, I can break this mold. I just didn't know how to without being completely derivative at the time. Because that's one of those things, like, I always want to do my own work, but everyone wants to, I think, in their hearts. But when you start making a lot of work, practicing something that looks like someone else's, it almost, it becomes a little too close. But those guys, I mean, those two, and so the Starnes brothers and Witkin as photographers showed me that there's a realm beyond just, the flat plane that we could work on here. So that was my deviation point. But yeah, I mean, I played with their techniques, and like I was just saying, it's like, oh, this looks just like one of their works. So I'm going to have to find my own voice in it. That's what's happened since I moved to Colorado. I mean, it's one of the reasons I love it here so much, is it gave me the gift of voice in my own work.
You said you've been doing photography for 30 years and you started out, analog, traditional. Were you doing commercial work, or you always been a fine art photographer?
I've always been a fine art guy. Because as soon as I did something commercially, I hated it. and I still do to an extent. It's like, oh man, I love doing something. And now, wait, it's a job now? This sucks. I was actually in the print industry for 15, 20 years. So I have a lot of technical acumen from that. And that's how I understand concepts of digital output and what goes in and what comes out. And that was kind of how I kept my hand in that like image world. Back in high school, I worked at a photo lab that, oh man, here's a memory machine. So we did all the crime photos for Cook County. And it was just like, well, I'm a 16-year-old kid working in this lab looking at this stuff. Yeah, so I was like, well, I'm going to blame you for my derangement. The place isn't open anymore, but we worked on that stuff. I'm like, I don't think I could do this as a living, because and then I'd meet a lot of commercial photographers, wedding, portrait guys, architectural guys. Not too many advertising guys came through. And it's like, they just always seemed like they're going to have a heart attack, or a stroke on the spot because of the pressure. And they're always chain smoking and always smelled like a fifth of vodka, that kind of thing. It's like, it wasn't like, oh, these guys are like the Brandos of photography. Like, no, these guys are grinding it out and hating life. So I decided to just keep photography as my passion. It is what I went to school for, but I also, I've got a lot of technical degrees too, in that nature. So I've always kept that as my precious little thing, so I wouldn't hate it. The only time I really started hating photography was right around the twist of Instagram. And I don't know, I bet there's a lot of fine art photographers out there, because it's like, oh, I'm looking at great photos, but I know the guy who started this, I know his work, and it's like, it just was soul crushing, because then it became homogenized. Like, there's, like Alex Soth, like where we lived in Minneapolis, his studio was 6 blocks from my house. Great photographer, started out as a newspaper guy, became a Magnum. And then he's doing his personal Little Brown Mushroom projects now, which are amazing. But he has spawned so many what I call Sothites of people doing work that look just like his, but aren't his anymore. And it's the lines got blurred with Instagram. There's my diatribe, there's my rant, there's my soapbox. So that's another reason I pushed myself into using my actual hands in my photographic mixed media collage works, is because no one could reproduce that. And if they do, it's going to be in the style, but it's not, you're going to know, because it's a signature type thing at this point. And it's not a mass market item. And that's why I kind of like, I still love going out and photographing things. It's just the purpose is different now. It's the foundation I'm looking for versus the finality, so yeah, I've loved it for a long time, and it's hated me, and I've loved it, and I've hated it. And it's on and off again relationship, because I'm sure anybody out there who's like shot film, switched to digital, shot film again, done used their phone, got better results with their phone, really had a personal crisis happen at one moment, because there's that like, oh, I did all that work, carried all this gear, and my phone took a better image, damn it. So that's how that is for me. It's just like, it's like image making is image making at this point. I don't care what people shoot, how they shoot it. Just make it intriguing. And that's what I'm trying to do. I don't want to be my own cliche.
So when you're coming up with a concept, does a concept start first and then you go out shoot the concept, or are you out shooting and then from the images you've gathered, the concept develops?
That's a great question, because there's really no formula. So when I do a commission, I have parameters. Like somebody wants a subject matter and a palette, and I'll photograph to those parameters to get an image that I need. Then sometimes I'll work on a body of work based on a concept. I write all these stories in my head and these things that I want to explore. And then I'll go out and look for something that feels that way. And then sometimes you're out there with you got a camera on you and something just in the head. Just it's like, this is amazing. This needs to happen right here, right now. And then I take it home and, I'll look at it 6 years later and like, oh, there's something there. So that's what I mean. It's kind of like, I don't have a solid workflow, except when I'm doing a commission or when I am actually doing a concept driven body of work. So what I've learned for myself personally is if I adhere to too many rules, I drown in it, meaning I get confined by it and my growth stops. So that's why I always leave room for, something to happen. Like I just came off, I just did a commission for Vectra Bank here. I did a 180 pivot and I've been working on this photograph for literally about a decade, imaging it, re-imaging it, trying to figure out what it is. And this last week, it's like, oh, this is what it wants to look like. So that's what I mean. There's got to be room to do those side things. And then I can put it aside, and if it's a body of work or if it starts a body of work, cool. If it's its own thing, it's its own thing. But I think, I know we all need some kind of construct to work within. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. It's willy-nilly. It's not tight. But on the flip side, that's also the formula for me personally of stagnation. I could run around and be the greatest wildlife guy, and all I know is wildlife. And then I can be a portrait artist, and that's all I do. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's more out there. So like so if you go to anyone's house who's got just landscapes as an artist, I bet you dollars to donuts, they've got something else hiding in a corner that doesn't fit that body of work that they're personally unsure of. And those are the works that speak to me. Like when I meet other artists, it's like, oh, there's the chance you took. It's like, let's talk about that. You're accomplished with Red Barns. Love it. Let's talk about this, trapeze artist image you're working on, something like that. Because that's where I think the true thing comes out, is when we drift, and out of our own personal constructs. And that's why I try, it's like, I try to live a disciplined life, like, minimum of 30 hours a week in this, studio art related work. And then it's like, I find that like, oh, I haven't like left the house in 2 weeks because I've been so, laser beamed on this. I got to put it down and go be a part of the world, because that's what my art is about the parts of the world. And here I am hiding out because that's, because I'm so disciplined and constructed, I'm actually doing myself a disservice, So yeah, I want to see that one weird piece that you got in the corner. I'm that guy. Something about that.
I am that guy too. Like I'm always curious about just what you said. It's nice to see a body of work, but I'm always like, when I look at in fact, I just acquired a piece like the other week, and I'm always looking for that thing that's different than the rest of the stuff. I want to see that anomaly, that one thing that kind of is totally out of the realm of what they usually do. That's what interests me, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what drives me, because, I've got a bunch of those one things that haven't been rationalized. Because whenever an artist or myself, I do the one-off, it's so out of my comfort zone and like what I'm trying to do at the point of time. It's like it's not fully rationalized. So that's like, make something and sit with it. And then that's the kind of work I personally have found spawns bodies of work because you try to rationalize it now. And then hopefully you're lucky enough to get that other weird thing to make another body of work, because as an artist, that self-motivation's tough. And I understand, like, there's all the principles of discipline, be in the studio, blah, blah, all the rules and whatnots. But yeah, we didn't become artists to follow rules, Instead of the if then statement, ask the why this is how I look at my art. It's because, yeah, if I do this, this will happen, sure, but why the hell did I do any of it? We got to ask ourselves these questions as artists.
I know you're a thinker because I've read some of your writings. Do you ever get just stuck in your head a bunch? Does get hung up in thoughts in the process of trying to make art?
Oh, well, me and some friends have a term for it. I am a mental masturbator, it's like always, I've like, right after I left Cal Arts, I was so whacked out on art and that I was actually joining the police academy in St. Louis. And then had a moment when I got accepted and looked around the room with all the other guys like, what the hell am I doing? So I always catch myself right at the last moment before I make a big mistake, but I get stuck. I get stuck a lot. I over intellectualize instead of just doing. Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm my own worst critic. Yeah, that's why it's like, yeah, I tell some, like some younger artists, I'm what I consider early career, but like a lot of younger emerging artists, it's like, hey, just do the work and just get it out there. And don't ask all the questions of what, I don't want to be known as this guy or that guy or that, because you're not even known as anyone now. But as far as like my own theories and concepts, like I spent 2 years photographing roadkill because I had to figure out what the hell was the appeal to me. So, I mean, I would go out at like 6 a.m. with my orange safety vest, in the middle of the road, set up gear. And at the end of those 2 years, it's like, what the fuck was I doing? I'm not really intrigued by this, but I got stuck, and it's easy to do. I mean, you get that hyper focus, that's one of the things I've got is I get hyper focused to the point where I get lost in in the details. So that's why I have to have like discipline with enough room to break out of my own constraints. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can theorize on things to the point where it's like, I'm not alone in this, but every artist has painted or photographer has photographed or sculptor has sculpted their perfect work 1,000,000 times in their head. And that's why when we have a failure, it's soul crushing and it's hard to pick yourself back up because we didn't allow ourselves to fail, or we didn't allow room for that exploration, because that's what art truly is like we're exploring a lot of things, be it, from conceptual art or color theories or dynamics of hard edge, soft edge. We're all exploring these things in art that we can get lost in unless we leave an escape hatch, and that's what I mean. It's like we got to accept that, we are going to make some shitty work. I think I've got a stack of it here behind me. And that's okay. That's why it's like, you got to get out of your head sometimes, but it's like, it's tough though, because, as many artists, like we get into that flow mode and it could be 6 hours. It could be 6 months. and you just get stuck there. And then like you finally come up for air and it's like, what did I do? And it's either amazing or it's highly mediocre in my case a lot of the time, So yeah.
So speaking of roadkill, there's a piece on your Instagram called "Death of the Sacred Deer."
Yeah.
Did that kind of stem from that, or is that something totally different?
That is a direct descendant of that work. So yeah, that was a total descendant of that body of work. You can actually see this at DART right now. It's at the Spot on 3 show there that got juried in by Doug Casina. So if you want to see it in person, go down to DART on Santa Fe for that. But so this image, what this came out of was that 2 years of photographing roadkill. And then I parked it for a decade because I was too attached to it. Came back.
So what do you mean you were too attached to it? I'm sorry. What do you mean that you were too attached to it?
I could still smell it.
Gotcha.
Quite literally. I could still smell it. I still know where it was at. I could not look at it visually from a removed place. That's what I mean by being attached to it, So yeah, it's a lot of my work comes out of my archives because because it's like I have to remove myself from it so I can see it again. And like what this really spoke to me was it just reminded me of it's almost biblical in a sense to me of one of I'm terrible. I wish my Catholic wife was here. She could tell me right away. It's like when they disemboweled the jester from the gallows, how the legs was splayed in a triangle. And then that's what started speaking to me was the actual composition of the animal seemed more unnatural than the reality. So it kind of transcended that visceral thing and became its own thing. So that's how this one came about. Yeah, it's direct descendant of the 2 years. I think I got like 5,000-6,000 of those images, and I've only probably used 3. So, but this is the one that spoke to me, and it became something in this new style. And that's what I'm finding as like, because I had done all this photography work, and now that I'm in this current stage where I'm doing this mixed media type work, that I'm seeing that all those images that I didn't know about photographically have become part of my new bodies of work, because this is how they needed to be seen. This is how it needed to be shared. Because if this was a photograph, it would just be shock factor. It would just be gore. It'd be spectacle. What I've worked at trying to accomplish here was a transcendence of that. And that's that's kind of where I live, is in this confluence of overlooked and beauty. And I try to find that, and navigate that line between the two. And this is like a perfect example of that. Because to me, it's like, I look at it now and I love this image. It's one of my favorites I've made, but it's also the most, it's the one that people like, oh, I get the most O's over.
I think this is a stunning image. I'm glad you found this and brought that up, Wes.
Yeah.
And I had seen this image before, but I had forgotten about it. And now hearing about your process and the whole, out there for 2 years photographing roadkill, and then you're revisiting the work and incorporating into this new work that you're doing now, this mixed media work. I think it's brilliant. I really do. I'd love to see a whole series, but this piece is stunning.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this is one of those pieces I actually had to make like 3 times. Yeah, and I'm okay with, I'll make it to scale. This is when I learned to start working smaller. This was earlier in my process. So I made 3 of these. This is the final one because, the other 2 just did not speak to what I was trying to say. It didn't do the subject matter justice. And that's my big thing is like, it's like I was talking about earlier. It's like, yeah, we all fail, but we know if it's something that needs to be pursued, and it's that thing that gnaws at you. And this was definitely one of those things in my visual memory that gnawed at me for years. So like me making it and calling it done, it's almost like it's a release of sorts, because now it's like out of me, and I don't need, it's like it's out in the world, it's doing its own thing. And yeah, I love it too. I mean, it's like, it's one of those, wow, this really lined up. This is something I'm proud of. And yeah, I hope to make more work like that, so because this is the stuff that keeps me going. It gets me jazzed up, and like, but how I came about doing it, as you know, it was a slow process. It wasn't just a aha moment. I wish I was an aha guy. I wish I just was, what do they say, pissed excellence. I don't. I got it. I like you. I got to think about it. I plot it. I get my hands into it. It takes time. Like my average 48 by 48 inch work takes at least 40 hours. Just from from start to finish. I don't count image capture and thinking time, because then it's like, this one took me 12 years,
Right.
Because I don't want to commoditize 12 years.
So here's what.
Oh, go ahead, Wes.
Oh, I was just going to say, here's what I love about it. So I love the geometric shapes that are encapsulated in it, because I think it softens the shock value of the dead deer. And I love the color, because I think it does the same thing, but yet it's still it's a very powerful image. But I love the whole balance of the whole thing.
Thank you. Yeah. This is one of those images that taught me a lot. That's why you typically work in a muted palette now, because some of my subject nature is powerful. And if it's too powerful, I don't want to sit with it personally, So if I can't sit with it personally, how can I expect a viewer to sit with it? And there's the geometric shapes and those layers, and that's part of the process that I came up with, that like just added a different depth to it. And what it creates for me is I get eye relief in those zones. I get a greater narrative from not just the whole, but from sections of this image. And that's what I realized with this mixed media process I work with, is it gives a lot of room, and it lets people drift off, and it lets me drift off. I don't need to art doesn't need to be yelling at you to be loud. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I mean, that's me just getting older and a little liking quieter things, but it's a different sensitivity. So when I work with animalistic things, I kind of treat it from the stance of reverence, more so than the place of specimen, because these were things that shared the earth with us, and they have a special place too. And this one's returning to earth, and that's like I was saying earlier, that confluence I try to live in. There's a beautiful thing here, even though it is conventionally grotesque.
Yeah.
You can feel the reverence. You feel that 2 years you spent out and about with your hunter's vest on and, photographing roadkill. I mean, the end result was a masterpiece, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, as an artist, we all know we make that one piece, and it's like that sings our heart. That is not mainstream. It doesn't and this one is this is the one that cemented for me what I'm trying to do now. Because it is it's just it ticked all my boxes, and it still moves me looking at it. Of course it's for sale, but this is what, because everything is, because I can't have everything.
Right.
but this is like one of my greater works that, and I've used it to try and get into a lot of shows. And like, this is the first time it's ever been juried into a show. So I'm pretty pleased with that, because that kind of just like, I remember that was like I high-fived myself that day when it made the cut, just because like someone else sees what I've always seen and felt, and that to me is like, that was my art star success moment, and I'll take it.
Right. I mean, a little bit of validation goes a long way, and to have somebody like Doug Cassina see this and have it juried into that show, I think that says, a lot about the image.
Yeah, the image and the process and all that, because it's like I said, I'm working in a no man's land kind of with my process. So any validation I can get, it gives me that little nudge I need. I'm not saying everyone drop me texts about how awesome I am, because I already know, so I don't need to do that. But, as an artist, we really do put our heart on our sleeve, and we do put ourselves out there, and, just that little bit of validation. And this was that piece that was just like, yeah, man, all right, keep going. You're not doing something totally sucking, so it's okay.
So if we could deconstruct this a little bit. So you shot the deer. It looks like it's shot from above. So you must have been on a ladder, or how did you shoot that?
Yeah, I actually, so my road trip of roadkill, it started out innocently enough. Just, oh, look at that on the side of the road. Okay. And like, then it's like, oh, I should probably get a safety vest. Then it's like, I started carrying a ladder so I can change my perspective point, because, that was the whole goal of this venture, was to like take these dead animals and take them out of the narrative and create a new narrative with them. Because like, if you show, like a deer splattered on the road, everyone's seen it from that vantage. And then, so I photographed them all like that, almost like, honestly, I'm trying to think, it was like old time, like Luc Sante's evidence book, where he does crime scene photography from that elevated point with the tripod out so they can get a lay of the land. That's how I started working to get that viewpoint. But then it also created this concept of specimen, which was something I didn't want to do. So that's why it took me so long to figure out, like, okay, how is this one going to come about? Because this started life as a digital image. I remember playing with the saturations and this and that and black and white. And it just was like, it's not where it needs to be for, a few years. And then like this process came along, and like the first iteration I did this was full color output, and it looked like a muddied mess. It felt like it wasn't soft enough. It turned into some kaleidoscopy looking mess. The second one, I just did pure black and white, and it's like, that's not cutting it either. So like, okay, so that's when I started remembering the scene, like I had climbed, like I saw the fur on the road, climbed down the ditch of the road, saw this animal splayed out like that. And it was like this field of green. And, it's like, that touched me, like, oh, it's this beautiful field of green. So that's where you see the greens and the blue hues coming into this one. And the concept of the white deer, I mean, I just painted it white to soften it and, bring some homage to it. Because, Native American culture, white deer and all the white albino animals, they hold a certain degree of magic per se. And that's where the white came in. And the contrast between the muted tones and that soft white, that's not full bright white, really helped resolve this for me, and it maintained that softness I was looking for. So yeah, that's how this one came out. A lot of trial and error, and a lot of that headspace time.
Yeah. The geometric shapes Are they painted on or are they digitally enhanced?
That's part of the process because I tile my images together. So either I output the whole image on vellum and break it down, or I put out pieces of the image in vellum and reconstruct. And those dark lines are overlays and singular layers. So like where you see it dark, there's probably 4 layers underneath that. Where you see it light, it's probably a solid layer because the background color from this actually is hand painted, acrylic paints. The white is acrylic paint. And then there's some inks involved too for translucency on the background in some areas. And then the image goes on top of that. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like when the process is deconstructing and rebuilding, it's like, and then I'm reconstructing it in reverse on top of it.
Right.
Because the color goes down first.
Gotcha. It's really fascinating, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of like a Warhol where he laid the black and white down first and then put the color on top.
Correct. Yep. It's kind of like I put the black and white on last.
Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, so if you got up close and personal with this, you'll see brush strokes in the white areas. But it's underneath the texture of the paper that I was using. So it adds a dimension that like I couldn't achieve in photography. And this is like one of the perfect examples of what I was trying to do with photography, but just couldn't achieve it with straight photography.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the process because it lets me wrap my head around it. I definitely want to see your work in person because obviously it probably looks a whole lot different in person.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing is like photographing the textural quality of these things is pretty tough. So that's why it's like when someone wants to see my work and I pull out the iPhone, it's like, man, I should just carry a little sample book or something because it's not doing myself a service. But we got to get our images out there somehow.
Yeah.
But there's a huge textural component because, like I was saying earlier, that flat surface of photography with the single image, that was one of my constraints that this process helped me break out of. And by because photographically, if I were to do this as a one sheet image, this would not be a solid photograph. Like as far as mainstream standards go. But what it is now is it's its own artwork, it's its own thing, and this is where it needs to live, because it's as I'm in my head a lot, like you guys said, and it's a complicated thing, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a messy thing, and it's an accomplished thing. It really embodies all of that. This process.
What was the catalyst for you to say, "I'm going to go out and photograph roadkill"?
I don't. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, this is crazy. This is going to show me. I'm going to fly my freak flag now.
We like freaks here.
I was just cutting the lawn at my house in Minneapolis, and someone that literally ran over a cat in the middle of the road in front of me, and just kept going. And then some lady from the neighborhood came over, grabbed it, and threw it up on my lawn. And I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Well, she's like, "Oh, so the owner can find it." And all I could think in my head is, if I was the owner, I don't think I'd want to find my pet this way. So I actually, gave it a day or two, scooped up the cat, wrapped it in a linen, buried it in my yard. It's like, because if I'd have pets, and I would never want to find one of my fluffs crunched on the road. And then, from that moment, I started thinking like, okay, so I showed this, what was more than likely a stray cat, a moment of, compassion in its death. So that's what drove me out onto the road because things started clicking like, man, I see this dead stuff everywhere. I just started photographing it, and like, and the amount of and the diversity of the roadkill I came across was intense. And yeah, that's what I mean. That's how I like, that was the nucleus of that project, is like, how can I take this morbid, gross, icky thing that we just want to throw on someone's yard and hope for the best into something of beauty? Because I like living in irony, you know. That's why I love the irony of things, and that's what spawned that whole 2 year project of just roadkill. And when I was in California, I did something similar with the roadside crosses. Yeah, that's when I kind of like, I'm done with this. It's time to move on, because it's just like I'm doing the same thing in a different trope. But that kind of did the same thing for me. Is like, because each one of those, we see them, it's generic, but each one of those roadside crosses had a story on its own. As a death site, people paying reference. And it's like, okay, I have this thing where if I become my own cliche, it's time to move on. And I had become my own cliche with those two projects. So that's why it was time to move on. And now, like, looking at it, it's like, yeah, I always question this: is what am I doing exploitive? And I wondered about that with that road cross project. So that's why it's like, I'm done. Time to move on. And now it's like, fast forward a decade, someone else is doing it, and that's okay. They can have it. They can map that. It just didn't appear to appeal to my sensitivities. Yeah, I'm all about the long story tonight, guys. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I mean, it gives it context, and that's what I kind of wanted to hear. And sometimes you get these ideas and you think, oh, that sounds like a great idea, and then you get into it, you do it for a while, and just like you said, you came to the conclusion like, I don't know if this is really something that's going to go anywhere, and it's, you felt like it was kind of exploitive. So you were like, all right, I think I did it. And, but some of this work is now taking on a new life in this new body of stuff that you're doing. So it was well worth it. It was all part of the journey. It was all part of the experience, right?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. It's like, I've had a lot of crazy experiences in my life, and they're all past to where I'm at now. And it's all like, what do I take from all those artistic journeys, physical journeys, metaphysical journeys? Not that like, what do I take from that? And who am I now? Who was I then? I think of like the work I was doing in my 20s and or teenager photographically. Oh, I just wanted to be the cool kid, and then it's like, to me, like, there's stages in an artist's life. I want to be cool. I want to be known. Then I call it the trauma years, where it's like we wear our trauma, and then then I want to see the art when they break out of the trauma years, and they've come to grips with who they are. And that's what I'm doing, these last 5-6 years, is like, this is who I am, and I'm cool with it. And that's part of that journey, all those little pieces, and it's like, I wish I could undo some of it, but I can't. So I'm not going to, it's a part of me, and how it comes out, hopefully it comes out in a good way. So yeah, art, it's truly a journey. And that's why it's kind of one of those, I just keep pushing it. And it's like, if I think it's weird, what's nice is I've got enough trusted people in my life finally. It's like, I can do the, what do you think of this? And they'll be honest, versus, thinking my fragile ego can't take it. It's like, I need feedback. And that's why it's like, this journey that I found is like, it's like, you first you learn skills, then you learn who you are, then you learn to trust yourself, then you learn to trust others. And that's what makes good art, is all that. And that's why it's like, you could see a young artist's work versus, a middle-aged elder artists' work, it's different. And even those paths in their work are different. And that's just how it goes, And it's like we got to accept these things, like these flaws of ourselves, and that's where the heart lives, is in the flaw. I mean, I do believe in that philosophy.
Tenet wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Nick Kremske, and you're listening to Tenet Podcast.
Obviously, you were taken with photography from an early age. Was art always part of the equation of your youth? Did you grow up in an artistic family?
No, I grew up very humbly and of modest means. So getting school supplies alone was kind of a crunch, and I was thinking, having listened to your other podcast, I was thinking about it. It's like, I got my aesthetic eye from my mother, and because we would always be doing craft things to sell it, a temple fair or a church fair. And then I got my technical acumen from my father, because he was always a hobby head. Yeah, it's like always into some weird hobby, and it always had to be, he would take it to the most inane levels. So, I mean, that was my early spawning. I didn't get into actual photography or art in general until I hit high school and had access to it on my own. And then that's when it started. Like, as a small kid, I loved stories. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. The library where I grew up was kind of my bastion of safety, my fortress of free will. And I'd go over there and I'd just read, look at images, every other day. I'd be at the library. And that's what really got me fascinated with this, visual art and, written art. And that's what fed that young mind. I just I didn't know how it was going to express itself. Like every kid, I doodled. I had that, the Walgreens watercolor paints that, but always the wrong paper. So nothing ever quite worked. I never had Crayolas. I always had the generic version, which always smelled really bad. But I got into photography in high school, and it was just like, I remember that first, a lot of people in photography have learned it in the silver tradition. That first image that appears is just freaking magical, because it appears before your eyes. It becomes nothing. A concept became a thing. And that was like, oh, this is how I'm going to frame my voice. This is my voice. This is holding me. And from there, it's kind of like, that's where I really dedicated myself to photo work for a long time, because of that moment in high school when I finally got access to education and art materials.
And that led you to the path of going to university for art? Yeah.
So pretty much, I grew up in Illinois, and I was actually supposed to go into the Navy as a photographer's mate. And I went to review my deployment paperwork, like 3 months before, and I had been switched to flight deck maintenance. And I was like really shattered, aimless, because, like where I grew up, you either went to the military or you went to DeVry, a tech school. And then I had hedged all my options on the military at that point. So I was a little like, what do I do now? So I ended up going to Minnesota. I had an uncle who lived up there, and he's like, hey, come here, go to community college. We'll get this figured out. And that helped me tremendously, because I went to community college, and then he had to move to Kansas. So I went back to Illinois, was totally miserable. So I just ended up hopping a train with like $300 in my socks and went back to Minnesota and couch surfed for a few years and got my shit together, so to speak, started getting into the print industry. But always pursued photography throughout this, my personal buildings Roman stage. And that's, I was lucky enough to meet my wife during this stage. And I was making good money in the print industry, and they were starting to pay for like my technical education. And I got fed up with it. I was like, this is not something I want to do. So I applied to Cal Arts, got into Cal Arts, went out there, ran out of money in like 6 months because art school is expensive. I mean, really expensive. I think a semester there costing me about $70,000.
Wow.
And I was young and I was naive and, so forth and so on. And I touched on it earlier. Then like me and my now wife moved back to the north, then moved down to St. Louis where I was going to become a cop. I got back in the print industry, and it wasn't until my mid 30s that I went back to the university and got my full education at arts instead of the piecemeal. And that's, that was one of those great freedoms in my life. I was like, because I had built up a career in IT and print and all that it wasn't what I wanted. And, life had happened and you got to pay the bills. So eventually, like my job with the company that shall not be named ended because of an involuntary reduction in force thing. But I had worked for them for over a decade. So I had like, between that and unemployment, I had like 2 years on top before I hit my savings to go figure stuff out. And that's when I went to the University of Minnesota, got my undergrad work done. And, and that just really opened up a lot of opportunity for me. So in like the whole time I was there, I studied primarily photography, but part of that arts education is you got to do other things, And so I finally was getting my hands dirty with printmaking and seeing the surfaces and painting. And, it's like, I'm never going to call myself a painter. Yeah, I don't want to do anyone a disservice. I can use paint, but it's not my voice, It's one of those things. So, yeah, from the photography thing, I got that education. It was great. And it just opened up my mind. Helped me deepen my relationship with arts. And then they did something really great is like they helped me go to China and be as a guest artist at the Beijing Film Academy, where we, there's like 5 or 6 of us who would just pretty much were in Beijing for a month, giving talks and hanging out, talking about Western photography. And then that turned into a museum show at Weizmann Art Museum. And it's like, okay, there's something here. So like after I had gotten back from China is when I opened up my studio practice in St. Paul. And, now I'm in Denver, so that's kind of like, that was my journey in a nutshell.
Wow, man. Yeah. I love that. And it sounds like the education you got at the University of Minnesota was really pretty pivotal. Like it gave you a lot of skill sets that you didn't have previous and kind of opened your mind a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, because like everyone who starts in photography young, I mean, we look at all the classics and all the great photographers and think it's supposed to be one way. Then I met guys who are, like, the cool thing about the University of Minnesota, to be an art prof there, you actually have to be a working artist. You have to actually have a practice. They don't want a theorist. They have plenty of those. So like if I'm learning skill sets from someone like when I was in sculptor and learning metalworking, this guy owned a metal fab company, stuff like that. So I was getting practical knowledge. And what I learned from a lot of these guys was like the reality of things, what the image is, that's the thing is like, you spend 15 years taking what you think are cool photographs to actually being able to look at something, having the vocabulary, the visual vocabulary to look at something and like, what is this? What are they saying? It's like, oh, I never even considered the other person before. So yeah, it was great. And that's why it's I could have probably done well at Cal Arts had I been more mature, but I wasn't. But I'm very happy with my university education. And that's why I tell people, it's like, just because you don't think you have an arts education doesn't mean you can't get one. I mean, there's so many opportunities to broaden it. And it's not about the art speaker, the culture. It's about learning to see, and learning to create and finding, what's out there. Because without I think, being forced to experiment, I would have been spinning my wheels a lot longer with the method I'm using now to create my art. I actually knew what substrates I was using, the materials, because I had seen them before. I know what to, it's like I know what archival practices are. I know that, like, when you hang up my blue, sacred deer, it's not going to fade in 2 years, and that's important stuff as an artist, is like, because you can make these things, you can do these, and we always try to work within budget, but there's certain things you got to do so your art outlasts you, and that's I learned all that great stuff at the university. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned your experience going to China, and I want to talk about an image that
Sure.
I'm assuming that you shot while you were there on that trip.
Yeah.
This is from a recent show that you had at Next Gallery, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, this show, this was like, I think I was there about 3 weeks, and they put me up in a pretty nice little housing. I had to share the room with another guy, but we were comfortable. And from like this, I think we're on the 7th floor, and this was my view every day for about a month and a half, where these guys working in this pit, building a new building. And this image to me is all about those guys, in the essence of, I was starting to get homesick at week number 3. It's getting a little tired, a little wore out, just burned out on the experience. Because when you're over there, the air's different, food's good, just different, but you just run yourself into the ground. So I was feeling that way. I was looking at these guys, so I stood up on the AC unit in the room, stuck my head out the window, and got this photograph. And like everything else, like, oh, cool image, something there. This became something, like 5 years after the experience. And the white dots, that's something I learned from Baldessari, visual artist out of California. And he uses dots over the heads, not to like dehumanize, but to create an access point. So these are everyone people, not those people. And by using that and these gold lines, I call this image the way home. Because in my imagination, it's like all these guys are connected. Because I learned it, like, so a lot of these guys were from the countryside working these construction jobs and sleeping rough on site. I mean, so at night you would see these little fires popping up from their little stoves as they're cooking dinner on their cardboard mats and their sleeping bags. And like I'd run into them at the cafeteria at the school, and they're just happy to get a hard-boiled egg that's warm that day. I mean, these guys are like real. So I started thinking, like, man, they're doing this suffering to make their lives at home better, and that's the only thing in their heads is the way home. And it's about like, and I was feeling homesick. I was like, I bet these guys, like, I'm whining about my 20-hour flight, whereas this guy probably had to walk 30 miles, take a train to like, some other kind of rustic transit. his travel home probably took days, if not weeks. And here me in my privilege up here and like looking at these guys just slogging it away. And like, I felt a connection to them in the essence that, sure, I come from privilege, but we all have this longing for home after a while. And that's what the lines represent, are the pathways home, the pathways of interconnection to themselves and to everyone in their group. And the color just came organically. It's part of the process. And as one of those like, it's not getting the purity and color I was looking for. And it started becoming its own thing with the visual field, the color. And I just let it happen. And once again, just let it happen if it feels right. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely love the color work and the yellow and the play of the yellow and the pinks and reds. It just gives it an aesthetic that's really pleasing to the eye.
I like that you made it anonymous, that you didn't give it necessarily. I mean, there's context in the words that you wrote about it and what you just described to us. But I love how you made it universal, and there's people all around the world, right, that are in these kind of situations and, where they're doing something that's very difficult and hard to make their lives or the lives of their families better, right? I mean, that's universal.
It is universal. And it's also, I talked earlier about that, that concept of exploitation. Like, oh, look at these country people working hard. And it's like, no, these are people working hard. And you're right, by using that, it's not about country people. It's just about people. And that's a great tool that, I learned from an artist, and Baldessari, like his was simple. He would just get these little round stickers and put them over the people's faces. And like, damn, it's like, so as artists, we do pick up these tools from other artists. And that one, it's like, yeah, I will say where I got that tool from, because it heavily influenced this. And, and this other piece I just did for Vectory uses the same motif because this is the image they liked, but they wanted one fitting them. And I use that because it's about people and connection, and it's not about that voyeur. It's not about exploitive work. And there's this beauty to this image too. Like it's so complicated, and it just like kind of makes your eyes go all over the place with like the horizontal, vertical line work. And I found when I drew in these gold lines, it gave me visual field to move in. I kind of started working in this geometric zone versus like if those gold lines weren't there, it would feel a lot more chaotic to me, even though I added another complication to this image.
Yeah, it kind of grounds it, right?
It totally grounds it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And this is the direction I'm starting to push my newer works, is working with this grounding line, as you called it, and this entry point of humanity. So hopefully you'll be seeing more of this in the future. Because this was one of those that was in the corner. And then I was lucky enough to have an art consultant come by, and she's like, "What's this? What's this doing here? This is good." I'm like, "Really? You think so?" So
yeah, it's like she gave you permission to explore it further.
Gave me that nudge my fragile ego needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a powerful piece, so I really do like this one a lot.
And this was just a study. That's the irony of it, and that's what I mean. It's like it's finished, but it's not high finish. Does that make sense? Like it's kind of the cradle board's all cattywampus. It fell off the wall. The board came off. So it's like I want to remake this, but it's like one of those. Can I? I mean, maybe it just sits as a digital image out there and it's going to live in my living room. I don't know.
And you said this is the same, you use this base image for what you did for Vectra as well?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't have any samples yet because I just asked her if I could show samples since it is a commission work. Maybe down the road they'll be on my Instagram.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, because you said you kind of took it in a direction that communicated or conveyed what they wanted to, how they wanted to utilize it or do with it.
Yeah.
I was just curious, like that direction that you went.
So Vector right now, what they're doing is they're building the new corporate headquarters in DTC.
Uh-huh.
And I was lucky enough to get with P&S Art Consulting that's doing the artwork for the build out that they're going to furnish the place with. And they like this piece a lot. And they wanted something that, hey, we love this image work, but, we're at the new Bellevue station where Vector are about connecting community and each other. And that's what they saw in this was the connectivity. So that's what this image came about was something like, that represented what their needs were more so than like this image, because they wanted that kind of feel, but they wanted it to be Denver based because we never see construction like this here,
Right.
This is obviously not America. So they wanted to see something that was more along the lines of like, that could be local or regional at minimum.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is really interesting. And so you took the same kind of concept. It's not the same image. I was under the impression when we were initially talking about this, it was the same base image, but it's actually a different image, but using some of the same concepts in it to help illustrate what they wanted to illustrate.
That's correct. Yep. It's like it was like the perfect commission because there was like enough artistic freedom. And it was they were intrigued by one of my pieces that, I wasn't uncertain of, one of my, what I call breakthrough artworks. And it gave me a chance to make more of that type of work. So it was a great partnership, and it was a lot of fun to do, and that's, like I said, that was one of those, I had this concept, like I went down to all the train stations constantly trying to get an image together so I could show this connectivity and this movement through our city, and like just kind of a nod to them. I use Vectra Red to show the connectivity of that.
I love how you were able to take your fine art and cross over into the commercial realm, but still at the same time do it your way, because that doesn't always work in the commercial realm. But
Right.
They're hiring specifically because you do this thing. So like you said, you had the creative freedom to do what you do, yet, you did this commission and, who knows what it leads to from here, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's one of those, it's the next step on what I've been trying to do. Idealistically, sure, I want to sell my work. I'd love to get into a commercial gallery so someone else can do all that work, though. Because as an artist, we spend so much time self-marketing, selling work, talking about work. And it's like, I'd rather just be making work and showing up to events. And so that's kind of like, that's my next level I'm trying to achieve. And that artwork I sent you was a gateway to that. And I hope I hope it's the seed that grows,
So more public art you would enjoy doing in the future?
I'd like my art in public spaces. Yeah. Like, I'm looking personally actually to get into, just get gallery representation so I can start maintaining, it's the business side of art making is a different animal that it's kind of like, I'm tired of doing, to be honest with you. Yeah. I'd rather have someone else sell my work for me is the gist of it.
Sure.
Yeah, wherever my art goes, it goes, and because the way I feel about my artwork is, someone's got to like it to want it there. And that is good enough for me. Because no one just goes, oh, this will work here. Just get it because whatever, you got to like it because it's not like much else out there. Whomever wants my work can have it, not have it, but they can buy it. I don't mind where they display it either.
You mentioned the thing that a lot of artists don't care for is the whole business side of things. They'd rather just be creating, but that's one of the hats that you have to wear as an artist and as a small business person, essentially. How would you rate your business acumen on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I'm a solid 6. I know enough to know I don't know it all. So I do treat my art like a small business. So, I mean, there's certain days of the week where it's like, I got to work on website. I got to get out there and beat feet. I got to look at social media. I got to do all that kind of thing. I got to track expenses, between materials, mileage, all that. And then you got to make the product too. So, I mean, that's why it's one of those things that it would be easier to just have one touch point, or someone else to handle the marketing aspect, because I'm not great at it. I'm not a young man who's a digital native. I find, a lot of social media could go either way. Noah Becker out of New York put it best. He's like, I'm a middle-aged artist. I'm not very relevant. So I'm not going to get lots of likes because I'm not very handsome either. And that's the thing. It's like, that's why finding your audience as an artist is the hardest part of the journey. Like, who responds to my art? Where can my art be seen that will be an intersection between my art and those people? That's the hardest thing as an artist to do, is find your audience and actually, but not let them get so deep into your head that you cater all your work to that other person's voice. So it's a balancing game. And that's what I think a lot of artists struggle with is this balance of creativity, exterior pressure, business, acumen, and things of that nature. And I've been fortunate since coming to Denver. I've had a couple of missteps, but on the most part, I call it the 2 years of trying have been very fulfilling and very fruitful, to the point where I know where I want to be instead of just showing up sometimes. Like the co-op has been a great space because it set me up with a peer group, and it set me up with, okay, I have to think differently. I can't think of artists in studio and how's this going to look there. How's this going to look in the world? How am I presenting my artwork? That's the thing. It's like, if you want to go to these next levels, there's a lot of considerations beyond a business card and a website, because you can get lost in that world of marketing materials. It's how do I approach this gallerist? How do I get on this person's radar? How do I make my work stand out? Does my work stand out? And what is my fit and finish versus what is the fit and finish in the place I want to be? And that's what I do, is like, I goal set by where do I want to end up? And I bring my work and everything that's part of it to that level. And if I keep doing that, I'm going to be making some of the best work of my life is ahead of me yet. And that's what's important versus, okay, I've arrived, now what? I don't ever want to be that person, because I don't want to be static or stagnant. I always want to be trying, but I do want to know where to put my energies. And I've learned I can't do it all. And that's the thing. It's like, that's why these art relationships are wonderful. It's like, hey, I can get support on the left here. I can get support on the right here. And just know I have to give it back. And that's okay. Because everyone's got different expertise levels. And that's why it's important for me to I'd love to get someone else to represent me because I get stuck in my head, as you noticed. I get long-winded, I get wordy, I even weird myself out sometimes, like, why the hell am I thinking that? So having someone who actually can speak to others well on that level is great. Like my wife is in sales, and what I've learned just by listening to her systems and all that, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a skill set. I can show up, I can make sure my zipper's zipped, I can make sure I got my shoes tied, but it's always going to be a 50-50 shot if I like just stick my foot right in my mouth or if it goes real smooth, and that's the thing. It's like, so that's why like being a part of a co-op has been great for me because like, we have, you go in there, you talk art, you look at art, you talk to strangers, you talk to people, you get the actual vocabulary and dialogues going about art. And that's not something that like that lone wolf, like, I call it the prototypical archetype of artist, like starving, languishing alone, toiling. That's not art. That's a stereotype. To make art, we actually have to get out there and move art. And if you want to make meaningful art, you have to get it in front of people. And that's, that's what I've learned is like, I've been very fortunate since moving to Denver is like, I've gotten my art in front of a lot of people and in a lot of places. And it's been a great gift because it's like, yeah, okay, this is working and I'm working, and next steps are, I want to focus more on getting my art in the front of people, but I need more time to make art instead of like trying this hand-to-mouth subsistence art life. I'm fortunate that, my wife can support us. That's very fortunate. And I understand that. But it also on the flip side, I'd sure like to see a meaningful income when it's
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the crux for all artists, right? It's like finding that balance and making that happen. And then what, like you said, wearing those hats and then figuring out how much your time is worth and what things you're willing to hand off to people that, maybe do it better than you can. And you can just free yourself up to do those things that you do really well, which is create the work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, and it's like, either I can be a great arts facilitator or a great artist, but it's going to be really hard to be both, and I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of great facilitators and artists. And it's like, that's when you like realize it's a real skill set. That's what kills me is whenever when I go to a gallery, I've got an approach where I go first. And if they come and talk to me like, hey, I'm an artist, I just wanted to see your space. I don't want to eat up your time. But when I go with, like, I've seen other artists, it's like they jump on the poor people. And it's like, wait, well, you got to slow your roll here. It's another human being. Just because they like your work doesn't mean that they're going to grind themselves to the bone. They just met you, So it's like it's a balancing act for sure. It's just like, yeah, you got to take initiative, but you don't want to be a pest. And you got to know, like, these are people doing what they do for money, for their living. Unless we forget that this is a profession and you got to respect it as such. And I think a lot of artists I did when I was young and more naive. I was like, oh, I just got to show up and I'm going to be some kind of wonderkin. I'm like, no, I'm just, I guess I was just an asshole, like expecting all that. Like, I'm just some dude off the street, it's like, I expect you to invest this all into me and I haven't invested anything into you, we got to, and the same is with all artists in all relationships, we got to invest in one another. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is you make them human and you invest in the relationship. You put yourself out there first as in essence to build a relationship and not to get your artwork and necessarily in their gallery. And you might find out that once you see their gallery, it's not the fit that you want. So
Well, exactly. What I've found too is like I've been very fortunate. Like, hey, this is not a good fit for us, but did you ever think of? And hey, let me give you their contact and let them know. That's golden. And that's how that's I hate to say that's how we're not Europe. We don't the village doesn't prop up an artist in the States here. That's it's how it's got to go, and that's part of the business part. It's like I think every artist, like I said earlier, needs to surround themselves with enough people that they're comfortable with, that can be completely honest with them, and even when they're like out of this world, and bring them back down, because we can get ahead of ourselves as artists. At least I think so.
I got a different question. But kind of in the same vein. If you're an emerging artist or maybe a young person in college trying to make it into the art biz, how do you find your own voice? What is that? Is there a magic step for that, or what's that entail?
Oh, it's super easy. Truly, it is. You just got to make a ton of work. You got to keep making work. Your voice will emerge. I mean, it might take years, but I think as an artist, if you're honest and you're working and making just lots of work, something will emerge. And it's those things that emerge that's your voice, and that's important, because there's a lot of young artists out there who think, if I just make this, I'll get this. Well, I'm sorry, but you're competing with 30 million other people for that acclaim. It's the voice in our artwork that makes it unique. It's conceptual art, same thing. It doesn't matter what the fit and finish is, or materialities, or any of that nature. If the artist's voice isn't present, or you haven't found your voice, that's what people want to see. I think, I have to say, I think, that's how, and the only way I found my voice was just beat my head into a rock, trying things, learning the technical skills. Your interview with Ron Hicks, he said something brilliant. When you get to that point with your art making where you don't think about technique, is when your art happens. That's where you need to get out. That's what I think where artists need to get to, is like, if my head is thinking about brush strokes instead of intuitive strokes, my voice isn't in it. It's a technical exercise. So getting to that point where the technique is automatic, the voice has more room to come out. And like the farthest thing is like, there's so much. I mean, I feel for young artists, like really young artists right now, because they don't know what it's like to exist without social media. And it's become this vapid proving ground of inconsistencies. I personally would say turn off social media for a year, if you could, and make your art, but be a part of the world. And don't judge yourself off of your phone or whatever social media is out there. Use it to maybe go see something, because that's the thing. It's like a lot of we don't make art in a vacuum, so don't live in one. Experience the world, make lots of art, and when you're honest, your voice emerges. I mean, that's what I think. That's my 2 cents on that.
I like that philosophy, man. I like just disconnecting and engaging for a time, make the work, and then you can come back and post what you've been up to, right? But like, instead of worrying about like, oh, I got to post today, but and try to put something out there of what I'm working on, instead of getting somewhat sidetracked in that realm, just focusing on the work and worry about that other stuff later, right?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of artists, we go to a sensitive spot because our heart's on our sleeve. We're showing our honest, our art is part of us. See, I never show a work in progress. I never show a progress video because I don't want to hear it. I don't, and if I did hear it, I would get too inflamed if I got something negative during that part of the process. Usually it's like when you see something, come through me, it's like, hey, boop, it's done. Yep, just like magic. You didn't, because I don't want that exterior. That's what I was talking about earlier. The audience. Is your audience just this media, or who is your audience? Is your audience a collector? If you're just making art for social media, knuckle down, go for it, whatever. If that's your concept of success, but if you're trying to make fine art, find your voice, go on the journey, it's not going to come through groups and thumbs ups and hearts. It's going to come from the individual interacting with real humans, and that's why I feel it's really hard because I know a lot of young artists where it's like, oh, I didn't get that many likes on this. I'm like, dude, I'm lucky to get 30. And I like, that's cool. That's not where your measure of success should come from. My measure of success as an artist is there's a stranger that comes in and buys a piece of my artwork. That's my measure of success. I can even drill it back to it's a compliment, hey, you're on the right track. That's my success. And social media, it's just, I don't know. I apparently I've got an opinion on it, but I don't think people should be basing their own value on it. It could be destructive, I think, for young artists to just live in that land of likes and whatnots, because now it's like you won't find your own voice because everyone else is guiding your voice. Because we're going to do what we get kudos for. We're going to keep repeating it. Then we're going to, next thing you know, oh, I'm in a stagnation cycle. Like my ugly word is stagnation. That's going to come because you're going to try to keep getting the same success measure out of social media as you thought you could get with X formula. Like I said earlier, it's not the if then. It's like you can't ask yourself, if I do this, then this is going to happen. It's not art. It's why this. That's where your voice comes out. That's where art comes out. And yeah, the journey of the voice, man. It's and I think we got to realize as a young artist, your voice is going to change. It's going to change. Just listen to yourself, right? That's what I got is honesty, listen to yourself, and just keep making work. Because you're not an artist unless you're making art. That's what I like to tell everyone. You're conceptually an artist.
You can't hold the paintbrush and wear a French beret and call yourself an artist.
Exactly, yeah. Can't show up with paint splattered clothes and a summer scarf and a black shirt, Come on, dude.
Hey, going back to your work, because I want to talk a little bit more about your work.
Yeah.
So that piece that we talked about, The Way Home, was actually part of your show, The Way Home.
Yeah.
Back in April, I guess it was at Next.
Yeah.
I want you to kind of stop and talk a little bit about the idea behind that show, if you would.
Yeah. Let me turn on my memory bank here. Well, this is one of those shows that kind of came across as a lot of languishing things from my past, and then a lot of I tried to put it out there, but aesthetically, just because it's like one of those questions of, I'm a guy who's I don't even know how many cities I've lived in and how many places I've been to. But there's always this, there's oh, we can go home. There's this way, it's like this whole show is on the concept of a home and how sometimes the way home is convoluted, or home isn't even a home, or and the connectivity and the signals and the longing of wanting to belong somewhere. So I'm actually half Asian. And a lot of people don't know that because I'm what I call whitish. My brother and sister look Asian. And so I've always lived in two different worlds, so to speak. There's there's the home world where we're all the same, and then there's the public world where like I got treated differently and I could see it growing up than my brother and sister by the community at large. Or, in my case, what kills me is like a lot of the, I call it the closet racism, where like someone thinks, oh, you're one of us, and starts railing on someone else or doing the accent humor and whatnot. It's like, and then I like to look at them, my mom's Thai, right? It's like, the record skips. And this was me dealing with those concepts of not really feeling like I belong, because, it's like one foot in one world, my heart in another, and navigating through those emotions. So like this image you have up here, that's my nuclear home. That's the house I grew up in. And, and it's fraught, and it's like, I could talk about all the things that went on in there. And it's like, the irony of this place is it's a bright yellow, happy house. Well, it wasn't. So that's why it's like, it's, me and my little sister call it the damned yellow house. It's not a happy place, because in the yellow is usually a happy color. So it belies that. So I was dealing with the concepts of not ever quite knowing, like, where when I go through the world. It's funny because when I was in Thailand a couple of years ago, and I speak Pidgin Thai pretty good. As soon as I would do that, it was just like hugs and kisses. I was part of things, because it's not an easy language. When I'm in Puerto Rico, I get pulled aside and get like invited to all these like cockfights and weird things, because like when I tan, I look like an elder Puerto Rican guy. It's like everywhere we go, it's like I'm like a chameleon culturally, but then it's like I fit in everywhere and then I don't fit in anywhere. So it's like dealing with that expansion contraction idea of looking and longing for that, that the way home, that, and what is the way home. So that's what this whole show like kind of spawned on. And as you go through the imagery, it's all kind of like those concepts, like they deal with either an emotive concept or a metaphoric concept with each piece.
I like what you wrote about, like feeling like you never really kind of fit in any particular place, right?
Yeah.
And kind of searching for that. Sometimes people are running away from their situation, and sometimes you're running to a situation, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's the typical story. It's either you stay where you're at, or you go look for something else. Or you go home eventually. It's something calls you back to a place you've been because it felt right. It's like this radar dish. It's all about transmitting, trying to pick something up, looking, then there's the nest image, which is pretty obvious metaphor. Home is the nest, but it's an empty nest. And it's like, is it the same home you left? And this show was definitely a lot more about questions than resolutions. And it was, a lot of my work kind of like is what I call nomadic, meaning that it's work of place. It moves. It's not like fixed in one location. And it's like with this show, like my previous show, Wayfinding, it's about using those things as we go through life to anchor us, that are pinpoints on that map, like experiential pinpoints, navigation tools, safety, danger, all that. And that's what this whole show was like, just playing with that idea of the way home, and what is the concept of home, and how do we find it? How do we get to it? Is it the same as when I left? Like that's what this image is for me that we're looking at here. It's the nest, which is an empty nest. And it's like, it's not the same as when we left it, but it draws us back. And that was one of those things, like I had made a couple of key point images, like that one, the Beijing, the way home, the title piece. And what I did with that is like, there's something here. And I started building this body of work around it because I had that strong concept. And I went through my, like, it's funny as I go through my photographic archive. Yeah, things emerge. There's a consistency to the image making I do after, the thousands of images taken, and sometimes the theme is just obvious. And this was one of those points, like, because I'm always like, even while photographing, it's like you're hunting, you're searching, you're hoping to capture. And it's, to me, it's like the same thing as, like, as you're traveling through the world, you just want that one place you belong. And sometimes you were already there and didn't know it.
I like that statement.
Yeah. You've done a lot of traveling, and obviously this was, a body of work that you put together based on, your search for a home.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you finally have found it here in Colorado?
Yeah, I'm good here. I'm happy here. I'm also getting tired of running around.
You do reach that point in your life, right? Where you're like, all right, I think I'm done. I think I'm good where I'm at.
Well, it's also one of those things that where we're at now, we're making it a home. We're conscientiously anchoring. We're not looking to be pulled away. We took the sails down. We got to anchor in, and we're building a life here. It's there's something to that as well. There's years there where, like, I would burn through a car every 2 or 3 years just because the mileage, because, like, I was always hunting and looking, and I used the premise of photography. Like, I'm going to go on a photo trip, and, like, next thing you know, my car's got 200K on the clock and it's dying in the driveway. It's like, what was I trying to accomplish? And I didn't realize what I was doing until we parked it here in Colorado. And it was like, that's how this show kind of germinated, is like, oh shit, this is exactly what I was doing. I was looking for that thing that made me feel a part of a thing. And thank God, as you get older, you do get wiser. For most of us, it's like, oh, it's me. I could have just, planted myself and became part of it, instead of thinking it was external, where this whole time it was an internal thing I was battling. So yeah, this body of work was like, it just totally spoke to that, because, there's a lot of images here of my nuclear home, like up Cicero, Illinois, and, like, then places, and then concepts of longing and looking and anchor. And it was a fun thing to put together, and like see how I can get it to line up. And yeah, I like this show. I enjoyed this show because it was conceptually tighter than my last one, I think. Whereas my other one, my show before this, I believe, was visually tighter, if that makes sense,
Yeah. Yeah. I really love the work that was part of the show. And you made some videos, incorporated some video stuff. Is that something that you've always done, or is that something that, you just thought you'd explore for this particular thing?
I pretty much, well, it's one of those, like, I wanted to create an experiential feeling. And, it's like, because with this show, I even had willow trees in the lobby of the place, making archways and things of that nature. And I was projecting video, and then I had links to video, because I wanted to create more an experience versus, I call it the gallery shuffle. When you go look at 2D work, especially, start on the left. 1, 2, pause, look, 1, 2. I wanted to break that up. So, like, like what I did with this show is I had QR codes up there that had some prose written to each image. I had some video, so you can get a little more immersed. And that was my thing. It was like, when I was, like, doing these travels and looking around, I was fully immersed. And how do you convey that if you follow that gallery 2-step model? You know what I mean? Because you may be physically standing in the art, but I mean, we've all felt those things where it's like, oh, I obviously look ahead at this, and this is where I'm directed. And then like what I did with this is like, oh, here's a QR code to a video link, boom, different immersion level, and it's like I wanted it to be more of a journey versus specimen, versus one on, and step 2, 3, And that's something like as I get the opportunity to do more solo type work, is I want to create more immersive type environments and involve interdisciplinary work. Because I've always shot video too. If it felt like something that needed to be done, I'll do it. It's kind of one of those. I made this kinetic sculpture. That's a video of it in action. This is a sculpture I made because like I visited my parents, and my dad made me and my wife sit in the back of the car like little kids, and I'm in like, my late 30s. So I just stuck my camera out the window as we rolled through town, getting driven around by dad in the back seat, because it was like, this is effing surreal. Yeah. And then the wind turbines I was just on I-35 in Iowa, and the sun was coming, and the whoosh and the is just like it is like you hear the crickets and the whirling and the mechanical noise, and it was one of those the quiet here is deafening. It was one of those moments where it's like so many different white noises. It was a cacophony, So that's what that was about, and the true thing of that one is like, oh, what's the subject here? Is it the turbines or is it the actual clouds? I don't know, but it gave it a great, it spoke to me in an environmental way of like I felt that place. It was like it was where I was supposed to be in that moment to witness this. So that's why I like doing video at certain times, is just as like it needs to be done, and what's beauty of like most of the DSLRs out there now is you can on a whim. My phone makes video now, for Christ's sake, so it's not that big of a departure.
Yeah, I love the whole idea and what you did with this show. And were people pretty receptive to the whole video aspect of it? Did you get a lot of people that stopped and scanned and experienced that part of it?
I got a few, not everyone, because you got to remember, sometimes the gallery crowd we draw doesn't have the digital acumen to know how to rock a QR code.
Sure.
Right.
But once we got some people responded to it. I mean, it was one of those things. What I noticed is people who knew what those were, like who had actually stopped and read the artist statement and knew what the QR codes were, or knew what QR codes were that could trigger these events, did. And what I also noticed is how it actually slowed them physically down. Because I'm king guilty of this. I can go through a museum in an hour because I'm just speed demon, boom. But as an artist, I want people to spend time with my work. This is my irony again. And that actually slowed them down, because it gave them another level to interject themselves. Because there's more to it. It's like little Easter eggs, like, hey, there's more here than just that, and that's what art, I mean, we get conditioned to seeing things. And I try to break my personal conditioning, but it's like, oh, sometimes you just got to roll through and say you did it. And sometimes you do want to linger. And like, that was a device to help people linger. And it was successful in that, it slowed people down. That knew how to access it.
I like the thought behind that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been great. And that's like the part of the beauty of a co-op now is like, now that you're starting to see other people in the group using this device, these QR codes and whatnot. And that's great, and I'm happy to contribute something back, since I've taken as well. And that's it's a nice little tool. It's not too intrusive. I think it's a lot less intrusive to have a QR code than like when some artists want to like, oh, read my manifesto on this piece. It's like, oh shit, I'm good. Thank you. Because you
Yeah.
just told me how it's gonna, you just told me how to look at this, and that's not what art is about. Sure, if there's a vantage point because it's an anamorph, point it out, please. But if you're going to tell me what everything's representative of, it's like, well, I'm not down with that, because you just killed my personal entry point into the work. So that's why I thought QR code was great, because it's like, do I need to? No. Is the verbiage in front of me? Like, I've seen artwork where the write up on the actual piece is bigger than the physical piece, and that's the kind of crap that kills me. It's like you got to explain that much of it, and it's lost. But giving people access to another level that was totally voluntary was a great little device, and people responded well to it, because it's like I said, I want to know, oh, I don't want to know more, and that's fine. It's like, because I hate when artists tell you how to look at their damn work.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I do. We're going to start to wrap this up here. I want to talk a little bit of business before we leave off tonight. How do you go selling most of your art? Is it through the gallery? Is it people that find you on social media? How does that happen?
Well, right now, like it's so predominantly since I moved to Denver, it's been through the gallery, and then it's been through friends of buyers. So like if I sell a work, typically it goes up into a home, and next thing you know, maybe 6 months later, I get a call from a friend of theirs. Is this available? Right now, I'm beginning to start working with an art consultant. So that's another revenue stream I'm trying to build. Hopefully I can give them what they need, because that's more of like a environmental base, like, hey, what fits in this environment? Do you have anything that, so that's right. But primarily most of my work, I don't know if I've ever sold anything through social media. It's like I've gotten scam emails through there and all that stuff. Like sold through there. So it's most of it's come out of the gallery, and then through other word of mouth is where it's at. And that's why it's like I keep getting into shows around town, and I'm trying to break out more nationally for shows. So that's why I'm hoping to get more into a commercial environment where they can actually push my work in front of a different audience or a new audience to help build that. But right now, it's just going out of the co-op or coming through word of mouth. But yeah, not a lot of it comes through social media. Actually, none of it has come through social media for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're getting some collectors, though. You're starting to get some people that collect your work. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's great, because then they get in competition with their friend.
Right. That's a good competition right there.
It is. And, it's one of those things, and it's been great because then I get to know them as people too. But like there's nothing more exciting to me though than to sell my artwork to a complete stranger, because, it's like, I've sold artwork to friends, and you always question it as an artist, is like, do they buy it because they're my friend, or did they really like it? Whereas if I sell it to a stranger, I know they like it. Otherwise, because they have no investment in me as a human, not yet, until I get my claws into them, But yeah, and that's, it's been pretty good since I've moved to Denver, but I was working at a different methodology in St. Paul. I was working more volume. I was doing a different type of work, and it was a volume, and I was doing a lot of volume there. But like, when I sell one piece in the Denver market, it's larger scale, higher finish. It's like I had to hustle to sell 30 of those other pieces to make, to make up the same costs. So I'm really enjoying, like, because, like, when I want to keep working at the scale I'm working, if not get bigger, that's my goal, because I like the presence of larger work. So, but yeah, social media sales, not so much. Word of mouth, gallery, yes. And the shows, like, it's like I tell other artists, you got to get into even the local shows. If there's a good juror, get it out there, because I'll get calls like, hey, I saw this at X co-op or X, center. I like that, or can you make something like that for me? So I do about 4 or 5 commissions a year. I also, through that vein, then I also have like a partnership with an interior designer, where if she's got a client who wants something, that's Nick Kremske's couch art line. That's what I call it. But I'm willing, I'm willing. And like everything else, if they're willing to let me go, I will go running with it. If they want it sedate, we can take a nap with it. So
How do you go about pricing your art?
yeah, I struggled. When I first moved to Denver, I did peer to peer. Like, hey, who's selling what? What size is it? What finish is it? And I really struggled because no one was making anything like me. And I tracked my cost of materials. I tried this, and I came up with one model which worked for up until this year, because I talked to, like, I had a couple of gallery visits this year. Consultants like, you're way too low, and then gallerist is like, oh, I can't sell it for that much. And it's like, well, and I considered the gallery. Like, okay, that's cool. That's not part of your model. That's not your bread and butter. And then, like, I was just in, what is it, Art Curtis Center's Art Upstate show, and Libby Guerin from Walker was there, and she gave a juror talk, and she's like, I have one thing to say to all of you. I love all your work that's in the show that I juried, and it's all too damn cheap. So what I've done is I found a comfortable price point with this art consultant, and right from this moment forward, that's what we're doing, and it's going to go up, but not insanely. So, like, and it's hard to come up with a price point. It truly is, and it was a struggle for me as a early career artist. Like, I don't have that following yet. Don't have this. I have some shows under my belt, have some sales, and now it's like, oh, I'm too damn cheap. And I think a lot of artists are too damn cheap. And I see it and I say it, because as far as, like, certain areas, I don't like being the most expensive guy there, because I'm not that expensive. So what the heck does that say, guys? Come on, up your prices. And because then you go across the Santa Fe to a co-op down there, it's like, you want what? It's like, it's like, you're not a mid-career known artist, so it's knowing where you're at, your material costs. Have you had sales? Because, like, if you don't have something that actually sells, putting a high price on it's not going to help sell it either. And that's the thing. Some things just aren't worth as much as others. Yeah. So yeah, that was obviously difficult for me to figure out, and I'm not going to say my number because I don't want anyone else grabbing it.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's one of those things that, we talk with just about every single artist about pricing, and it is it's across the board, and you got to figure out what works for you. And as you mentioned, and has been mentioned before in this podcast, it also depends on where you're at in your career,
Well, yeah, I'm going to throw an ad on there. Get with a gallerist and make a relationship and talk to them about that, because they know better than anyone else out there. And if you don't trust that gallerist, go talk to another gallerist and consider the gallery, because those are the people who make the pricing for our art. So, I mean, go to people who have the resources to help you do that. That's what I did. And it was mind blowing, So that's why I say get help and don't be embarrassed. You got to ask. So, okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you finish up there. Just wanted to get that out there. My PSA for my art cronies.
I want to talk about one more piece. This is a piece that Wes wanted to talk about.
Sure.
This piece here, Entangle, which was part of the Art of the State exhibit.
Yep.
Up at the Arvada Center. You've had, it seems like, a lot of success this year getting into these juried shows. And this was a fantastic show. Talk a little bit about this particular piece.
Okay, so this is actually a digital composite. This is probably about, I'd say, 15 photographs.
Wow.
And this one for me, this is the third iteration. You're noticing something with me. This is the third iteration of this image. And it was originally called Cloud Kill. And it's like, what the hell was I thinking? Like with that title. And it was done like as a straight print that I painted on. And I just was like, oh, this is cool. There's something here. But it wasn't there. So this is a photo composite. So these are all power lines from Beijing, Minneapolis, Chicago that I sat down with and entangled, because, it's like at that time in my life when I was working with this image, it felt like the world was closing in, claustrophobic, no blue sky. And because this image was actually made just before we moved to Colorado into what I call the great vastness, because like the Midwest, this is what it feels like at certain intersections. Like you just look up and you just feel like a human marionette, Yeah, you felt, because there's wires hanging everywhere and you're following it. And, this was kind of me delving into this technique. This is an early one of the piece in this technique for me. So yeah, it's like, so the background's been layered in acrylic inks, and then I laid the image over it.
Yeah, there's just something about that image I really love. I'm not even sure what it is, but it does have that claustrophobic effect to you. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's why, why the hell did I call it Cloud Kill? Is my okay, working title. I'll give it an excuse,
Right.
But that's exactly what I wanted to purvey is like, but there's this beautiful, I've always been drawn to industrial lines because I grew up in an industrial area. And the line quality of this one is what was like, oh, I'm going to maximize this. And I learned that if I didn't keep the palette monotoned, it would be too much. So it's another one of those things where it's like it helped me figure it out. And I was so pleased when it got into Art of the State at Arvada Center. And I was relatively newer to Colorado, so I didn't fully appreciate the honor at first, but I definitely do now. So anyone listening, I know what's up there. It's good stuff. And I thank them for accepting it.
Yeah. There's some heavy hitters in that show, man. So you should feel good that.
Yeah, there were. I mean, it was impressive. I was like, oh, it's just going to be at Arvada. That goes back to my whole thing. Go to the damn place you want to show in, because I didn't do that. I'm like, oh, Arvada Art Center. I saw it on Cafe. I'm going to go for it. Then I went in there and I'm like, oh, my jaw dropped. I was like, well, shit. Yeah, because it was a beautiful show. And that show actually helped move me along. I mean, professionally and business-wise, too. So, yeah, it was a great show, a great honor. And, I was like, and I was really nervous because ironically, I walked in to see the show in situ, and it's like, oh, my piece isn't here. Oh, my piece isn't here. it was literally the last piece in the place right by the men's room. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it. Because they had put all their like landscapes in that area, and this I guess they keep Holland categorized as a landscape at that point. I'm like, okay, I'll let you have that.
Sure.
So I was walking around all nervous. They said it was here. Like you lost your kid at the mall or something, you know?
Oh man. Anything that you're looking forward to between now and the end of the year that you're going to be a part of, or at the start of next year into 2023 that you want to talk about and promote?
Right now I'm actually just I got this new studio build coming up that I'm super psyched about. It's kind of like I'm trying to ramp up my production, and I want to get more gallery visits going up here. I get people to drive up and hang out and check it out and get more of a personal dialogue. That's what I'm really excited about coming up this year. It's like my approach to getting into shows is like, oh, that's intriguing, go for it. I don't try to like plan too far ahead. My next show at Next is going to be a fun one. We got a different theme going for it. I'm working with another artist, and we're going to kind of do a hybrid joint show. And we're going to just go a little off the radar from what we're both known for. So, I don't want to leak too much out. But the working title is Goodbye, Cruel World. And it's going to have some dark imagery made light. Yeah, there we go. How's that? We're gonna have that. Yeah, we're working on building a Shopify site for it because we're gonna swag it out and make some goofy things for it. It's gonna be I call it my art show with a coffee mug and an atomic bomb cloud. So it'll be fun. Yeah, so I got that. We're working towards that. We're working on each of us is trying to make a piece a week towards that goal. So it's either going to be half full or over full. I don't know yet, just because how production goes. But I'm just looking to keep plugging away at it, make more art. Like I've recently been changing my color palette to lighten hues and whatnot. So we'll see what goes on with that. I'm at a point where I'm really satisfied with things, and I'm trying new things because I'm starting to feel like my work's being received, so I can nudge it. It's just that nudge, and this is the fun part of art making for me, is like that nudge of I'm going for it. What the hell? Why not? And that's what's coming up for me. Just get that studio built, get some gallery people up to the gallery. You guys will be invited. Maybe I'll smoke a pork shoulder or something. So I'm a smoker too. I smoke a lot of meats and fish. Yeah, typical artist.
Well, that'll draw me for sure. I love smoked meat. Yeah.
Yeah, just follow the cloud, man.
There you go.
But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to that. I've been kind of like trying to get my own production going more, I've always been a singular project guy, and now I'm trying to work on multiple projects at once. So we'll see how that balancing act goes. But yeah, just got to keep burning and keep trying and keep meeting people. It's been great,
And remind us one more time where you can go see your work in person, that particular piece, Death of the Sacred Deer. How long will that be showing?
I think that's showing till the end of October. October 28th is the close. That's at Dart Gallery over on Santa Fe. I believe it's 900 Santa Fe or something like that. and they're showing there's lots of great work in there right now. It's Doug Cassina juried a great show. It's one of those things where it's like I wasn't going to enter, and then I saw who the juror was, and like, well, I got to try because, and he put together a great show. I mean, like one of our next members actually won Best in Show, Demery Flowers. You got to go see her piece as well. Another next gallery person got in there, Matt Lay. And also Joy Redstone got into that show, as well as Natalie Smith. So, I mean, like, out of 600 entrants, 5 or 6 next galleries co-op people. Yeah, and so you can see my, Death of the Sacred Deer there. And I'm starting to throw more work into the next gallery community group show that they throw up every 3 weeks to get more consistency. So my work's getting around. I'm going to try and enter a couple more local shows this year. And I don't want to drop them because I don't know if I got in yet, so. But I'll post all that on my website and throw out Instagram if people are interested in wanting to see it live. If someone ever wants to see or talk art, just send me a DM. I'm not that mysterious. I'm not that creepy, I like to think. So just reach out. We can do this. It's fun. I enjoy talking art. It's what I do.
Right on, man.
Well, it was fun talking art with you tonight because, I think there's a lot of good value bombs in there. And
Thanks.
So,
yeah, Nick.
Oh, yeah, I was just thanking you for the opportunity. It's I only get to pull out that art soapbox so often. So I got some good ranting in tonight. And I'm high as a kite on that.
Man, it was good. It was really good. There's some gems in there, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your Sunday evening to spend it with us. And I look forward to seeing you again in person soon, and seeing your work in person. Again, follow Nick on Instagram at In the Wood Studio. That's in_the_wood studio, and check out his beautiful work at his website. That's kremske.com. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.